basically I was so sheltered growing up in a township, right? Something so small it can't even be considered a town. Township is 600 people. So sheltered that I didn't even realize that entrepreneurship was a thing. The word entrepreneur was not in my vocabulary until I was an adult. My dad was a cop, my mom was a teacher, and I was told that there was only one path to success, and I needed to follow that path or I was going to be a loser and a failure.
All right, it's Jeff J here to make your day. Thank you for joining the episode 2 of the Make More Money podcast. This episode has Brett Knutson. This guy, and me and him connected so well on this episode. He built the software, got an investor, pitched it, and really just lived a life that I am in now. Anybody who knows me, follow my journey. I'm in the midst of developing software to help people make money and save time, as catchy as that sounds, and really just going all in on that. But apps are everything, man, and it's not everybody's trying to develop the next app or something. This is a kid who actually did it, got invested, and the reason why he did it, you're going to want to hear. The kid has a heart of gold. He's a really good, I want to call him a good friend. This is why I love doing the Make More Money podcast. I hope it inspires you to make more money. And with that said, today's sponsor today is a little app named Acorn. Acorn is an app you can invest in. So if you don't like Stash, but you want to get in some, and Stash wasn't right, and you went to check that out, try one until you buy it. Start putting your money. I always say save hundreds, where I collect hundreds, right? To save to invest, okay? So once you get to 100, maybe invest in a certain stock. And we're going to have a stock trading guy on, Ricky G. Grutz, I can't even say his name, TechBud Solutions. He did pretty good with stocks. We're also going to have Simon from NetCon who trades stocks. These two guys are going to be featured later on in the podcast. So sit back, relax, enjoy the Make More Money podcast with Jeff J. and Brett Knutson. Stay tuned. All right, it's Jeff J here to make your day, guys. We are live, but you're hearing this pre-recorded for the Make More Money podcast. I'm very excited to actually make time out of my day to have, and I'm going to butcher his last name again. I've been saying it wrong all the time, but let's hear about him. He has the same name as my favorite quarterback growing up, Brett Favre, and Brett is a serial entrepreneur, which I always thought there was something wrong with me when I was doing all these things for businesses. And then when I heard his story, I was like, oh man, I rock a lot like him. I've heard him speak. He's a great speaker. So without further ado, his first was a fashion company called The Mayor with products sold in stores. There's second, he's done so much stuff. I'd rather have you hear from him and what he's done. He actually can link up people with investors and really just is a king of a networker. Really cool guy to talk to, and just someone that you definitely want to talk to and makes time out of the day. Brett, I know that was kind of a butcher way to say, can you 60, 90 seconds tell people about you and pronounce your last name so I don't butcher it again?
Yeah, so it's Brett Knutson.
Knutson.
Super Norwegian last name. I'm from Minnesota, a small town in Minnesota. And I originally got my start in sales, ended up starting a direct sales company when I was 21, which failed. I think that failures are important to talk about too.
Yep.
So that was my first experience in entrepreneurship. Thought that I wasn't really cut out to be an entrepreneur. Ended up only starting another company because I was trying to solve a problem that my mom had. So my mom is chronically disabled, and as a result of being disabled and being divorced, she would just be at home by herself all day, every day. And I was trying to find a solution for her to be able to meet new people nearby that like the same things as her. And this like 2012, and there was nothing at the time. So being naive, I decided to start a social network, which is by far the hardest thing I've ever done. And I think the hardest thing really almost anybody can do. I don't recommend it, but because I didn't know how hard it was going to be, and I didn't have any sort of preconceived notions of, what the heck I was doing, I ended up moving out to Silicon Valley. We raised millions of dollars and ended up with hundreds of thousands of users and ended up solving that problem for my mom. And during that time, started a couple other companies, sold one in the healthcare space. And then 18 months ago, when I left Hive, started a marketing agency called Monopolize. And with Monopolize, we work with big brands to do big influencer marketing campaigns. We have big personal brand clients like Grant Cardone. And that's what I do now.
Yeah, and that's awesome. Actually, it's funny because I remember you talking about your mom in one of the lives I've watched you in many times. So guys, if you're not following this guy, Knutson, spelled out is Knutson, just that. I think you're verified on Instagram too, right?
No.
Not yet.
So what's funny is my agency does verification for other people.
Okay.
But verification in Instagram, in order to get verified legitimately, you have to have like a tremendous amount of press.
Right.
And my companies have a lot of press, but I personally don't. And since I know how the whole press game works, which is where you basically just pay for press.
Yeah.
Good
morning, La La Land, right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, but so we do that for people. We help grow their accounts on social, and we do a lot of that type of stuff for personal brands.
So with that said, so would you consider yourself, and there's a big talk on this with entrepreneurs, you said at a time like you didn't think you were cut out for the entrepreneur game, right? Because I have so much energy and everybody just pins me as, oh, you're the typical sales guy, right? You have a little bit more low-key, nice demeanor. Now, my belief is not any one person can sell. Everybody's in sales. They all do it in a different way, right? Do you believe in the introvert, extrovert thing? And did you ever identify as one or the other?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think by everybody's definition of introvert, I was an extreme introvert as a child. Mm-hmm. I would sit in my room and just literally read through. I had the Encyclopedia Britannica, like a copy, like the huge books that just defined everything. I had a whole set of those from my mom, and I would just read those by myself in my room. So I was quite, quintessential loser, right? Like just like reading by myself in my room. And I went along to, in middle school, being pretty bullied, not having any friends, being into a lot of hobbies that kind of made that worse for myself. And
what were some of those? What were some of the hobbies? Because I used to get teased on for Pokemon and HTML.
Yeah.
Right?
Pretty much that and stuff in line with that.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
So just, quintessential quiet introverted nerd. And, my dad would have to tell me, like, look at people in the eye when you talk to them, shake their hand, say hi, respond when they ask you a question. And so it wasn't until high school when I really kind of came online as a person, and in one moment, I had an extreme influx of self-awareness. And I realized everything that I didn't like about myself and everything that caused other people to bully me. And so I made a conscious effort to change all of that. And I ended up like changing the way I dressed, changing the way that I carried myself. I ended up joining sports. I ended up weightlifting. I ended up changing the clothes that I wore. I ended up changing the way that I changed everything about myself. And obviously it sounds easier than it was. It was ridiculously hard and took years. Especially when it came to trying to communicate better with people. It was just constantly falling on my face. People would say, how are you? And I would say, not much. They'd say, what's up? And I'd say, good. I'd say, how are you? And they'd say, good, how are you? And I'd say, good, how are you? Again, like I just total garbage communicator, but through just diligence and resolve, figured out a way to eventually get to the point where I was, by the end of my senior year, friends with everybody in my class. And it was, I basically accomplished that goal. And then I moved into sales because nobody told me that sales is supposed to be hard. And I loved it. And I felt like I was able to earn a paycheck instead of collect one. Mm-hmm. And the only other job I'd had previously was a cashier working for minimum wage. So sales was amazing for me at the time. And that obviously turned into effectively everything that I am now. And it's still one of my greatest strengths.
So 100%. And your demeanor, and let's actually go back to kind of the change. What sparked the change? How old were you when the change, when you got kind of out of your comfort zone, right? And you started doing sports. Also, what sports did you play, and weightlifting? What do you think inspired that change when you were like
that? So the sport I played was football. What inspired the change was when I was in 8th grade, towards the end of 8th grade, the very first girl that I ever had like a real crush on publicly rejected me in front of like a portion of my class. Mm-hmm. And that sucked. Right. So that was like, that for me was the moment when I immediately, it was crazy. I literally felt like I came online as a person, right? It's like someone took a light switch and turned it from no self-awareness to full self-awareness. And once you're self-aware objectively, you're able to do whatever you want. And that's what's amazing about emotional intelligence, is just being able to be self-aware and socially aware, and being able to read people and read yourself and figure out why people don't like you. And you know what I mean? So that started a really long journey, because it's kind of like, you know, I've been playing piano since I was 4. I can explain how to play piano to somebody in 10 minutes and they'll understand it in their head, but it's going to take them years in order to be able to actually translate that to playing the piano with, you know, their hands. So it's just, that was kind of the practice that I went through for the next several years, was just implementing what I saw in other people. And I would just study. I would study the people who were popular. I would study the people who had a lot of friends, and I would just model after them.
So, and it's cool that you say that through pain, you can find your purpose, right? As everybody knows, right? And it's funny because, you know, back in the day, I think, and hopefully people can reject, I've been rejected by a few girls telling them I'm going to marry them right away. They don't like that usually, which has been working well for me. I'm saving money. Jocelyn, if she's listening, and who else have I told I was going to marry, you know? I only asked one girl to marry me, and she said yes for a little bit, and then she was engaged, so it wasn't the best time, you know? So that's why you can't wait for the perfect moment. That's Angel too. People know who that is. But anyway, so self-awareness, and that's key to it. So through pain, you became self-aware, right? And then you started changing sports, got out of your comfort zones, right? So as your success that you started way back when you were like I guess you were in high school when that happened, right?
That was 8th grade.
8th grade.
You're talking about like when I got rejected by the girl?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was 8th grade.
Does the girl know of you now that you're having all this success now, do you think, or?
I have no idea.
Yeah, well, do you know her name? Could you say her name out here?
No, I'm not going to share her name.
So you mean you're a different man. Like, I'm already throwing them out, which is probably, I admire that about you. You know, that's good.
Yeah.
That's because, dude, you're a success now, man. You've built multiple stuff out for you. And not on top of that. So you got into sales, which, it's funny how smart you are. So I used to teach behavior school kids. They used to sit and read books all the time, right? I used to be a cashier. You realized, take the cashier, and you got into that sales job and realized, oh, this is just makes more sense, right? And did sales come easy to you with everything going on? Did it come easy to you? What was the main thing about sales, and what was that first sales job that you took?
So the first sales job that I took was with a company called Vector Marketing, which like half the audience is probably, yep. Everybody's like, oh, you sold knives.
Yeah.
But what I loved about it was the sales training that they have there. If you're brand new at sales, the sales training they have there is pretty unparalleled for a beginner salesperson. It's really, really good entry-level sales training. And so I ended up moving up into, eventually I managed like a 7-figure like division of that company, and trained over 120 sales reps. But it started out with me just being in sales. What's funny though, is I didn't realize that Vector was essentially a network marketing company that's just very, very well structured.
Yeah.
And so I kind of got out of like, I don't have anything against Vector, but I got out of it and I was like, wait a minute, this is like some sort of like secret society where they've kind of have everybody convinced that it's a job, and it's this, I was like, this is all network marketing. But yeah, the culture there.
No, I realized the same thing. It's ingenious how they built it up, and the culture, going with the culture.
So the culture there is incredible, right? So that's how I got my introduction to personal development, to Tony Robbins, to Jim Rohn, to just the concept of entrepreneurship, to the fact that you can, like, basically, I was so sheltered growing up in a township, right? Something so small it can't even be considered a town. Township is 600 people. So sheltered that I didn't even realize that entrepreneurship was a thing. The word entrepreneur was not in my vocabulary until I was an adult. My dad was a cop, my mom was a teacher, and I was told that there was only one path to success, and I needed to follow that path or I was going to be a loser and a failure. And so when I chose to not follow that path and I dropped out of school and I pursued sales, I was the definition in my town of a failure and a loser. And so, but for me, it was so freeing because I always felt like the black sheep right? I always felt like I didn't belong, and I always felt like nobody understood me, and I never knew why, because I didn't know what entrepreneurship was. So I just felt like I didn't belong, and I didn't know why. And I knew everything I didn't want, but I didn't know anything that I did want.
Right.
I just knew everything I didn't want. And that's a really hard place to be. So when I discovered Vector, even though it wasn't the perfect solution, it was something. Right. And it opened up my mind to just all the other possibilities. And from there on out, I've never had a job. I mean, I'm 28 now, so 10 years. And it's just all been 1099 or, my own business.
Dude, and so that's where I am now. And I didn't come from a family of entrepreneurs. I thought, there's something wrong with me, right? The same deal. So it's cool to hear other people go through this, and obviously our listeners as well too. Even the behavioral school kids who didn't fit in the school system of kind of what they teach you, right? And I coach people all the time, get out of your comfort zones, get into a vehicle that'll treat you better, even if it's selling knives, right? Even if it's doing something different, right? Or even get in a network marketing group. I was telling the guy the other day, as much as they're all drinking the Kool-Aid about something, you're in a better group of people who want to do more. And it's just getting you out of your comfort zone too than the 9 to 5. But so you were in that, how old were you when you were in Vector, and how soon till you, what happened? So you said, I talked a little about your mom, which I knew, but I didn't know your next success that you had is when you built something for your mom or you built something in relation to that connection. Well,
yeah. So I was a Vector for 2 years, and I made like a good living. I didn't make any crazy money, but I ended up starting that direct sales company and putting thousands of dollars into that. And then I convinced dozens of friends and family to invest $5,000 a piece into that company. So hundreds of thousands of dollars that they sank in, and then that company failed. So it was a very, very public, humiliating failure with all the people closest to me losing money. And that's why I was like, man, I'm just not cut out for this. Which in reality, what I should have realized objectively was something was wrong with who I was working with. Something was wrong with this specific opportunity. But I just convinced dozens of friends and family members to give me $5,000 each. So clearly I'm good at something is what I should have realized.
Yeah. Wow.
And I didn't realize that. And so I just went back into sales, and I ended up making, it was the first year I made over $100,000 was just working. I was selling cars.
Gotcha.
So I was just selling cars. And then that's when I came up with the idea for Hive, trying to solve a problem for my mom. And I was just in the car talking with a friend of mine, and he was, trying to help brainstorm, because we had actually had a different idea for a totally different company that we were planning on starting. Mm-hmm. Which I've never talked about this anywhere, I don't think. Yeah. That we were planning on starting a different company. Yeah. And the reason why we didn't was because we met with a RFID designer, because the company we were thinking of starting was in the hardware technology space. And he said that it was going to be like $3 million for a prototype. And we're just like, oh man, I guess we can't do that. Which is hilarious, because then I went on to start Hive, which Hive was over $1 million to develop to even get started. Wow. And so I went from one thing and I was like, oh, that's too expensive, I can't do it, to something that was basically equally as expensive to do.
But Hive, if I'm correct, you built that over time, right? Like you raised your capital. Like, were you selling cars while you're building Hive?
No. So I left, I saved up some money. And then I left that job to go on Hive full time, which is the benefit, obviously, of having very little responsibility. I had low overhead. I didn't have a wife and kids like I have now. I didn't have any of that stuff. And so I just quit my job. I had a bunch of money in savings. And then I went I went to Lawrence, Kansas, because I thought we had some developers we were going to work with out there, and that didn't end up working out. So then I moved to Silicon Valley. And I lived in Silicon Valley for over a year, sleeping on a floor because I couldn't afford a mattress, and living off of like less than about $1 a day for food. And it took me 13 months living in Silicon Valley, 20 months total from inception of the idea to raise the money. And it wasn't millions of dollars. Like I ended up raising millions of dollars, but it started out as just our first round of funding was $150,000. And my salary from that was $15,000 for the year. Yeah. You know what I mean? So like that, once I got the $150,000, that didn't feel like that big of a win. It's like, okay, now I need to actually like prove the model, go out and actually make something with a very small amount of money, make it work, and then convince investors that it's worth funding even more. Right. And so it was a tiered thing, but over time it became something big.
So explain for the listeners who know, and I know a little bit from what I did, and you're such a serial entrepreneur, was kind of focused. What problem did Hive solve that you guys did? What was the...
We helped, we were trying to solve the problem of loneliness, right? So we helped people find friends, meet new friends by introducing them to people who were nearby that shared the same interests as them. And so when you would sign up for Hive, you would select a bunch of different interests that you had, and you would create an account, and those interests that you were selecting were actually individual communities where everybody inside that interest category was talking only about that thing. And then you would get a blended feed where everything in the feed was only stuff you liked. So it was like a really cool community. And then all the people that you saw, all the posts you saw were from people nearby. So if you liked something that you saw and you were talking to somebody about it and you decided you wanted to be friends with that person and meet up with that person, you could, because they were only 5 minutes away. Right. So that's kind of the community that we created. And we saw, for me, my proudest accomplishment with that was we saw tons of people saved from suicide, which was unexpected, very unexpected. We had a mental health community, and a lot of people would come in there and post their struggles, and people would rally alongside them, and they would come back and say, thank you so much, for this community. You guys saved my life. And it was just like crazy, the stuff that you don't expect people to use a product for, that they end up using the product for. But the whole purpose of it was to help solve loneliness.
But, and so it was an app too, right?
Yeah, it was on iOS and
because I believe it's funny. I knew that, and I never put it when you explained it. I downloaded it for a time, and I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like a dating app, right? I was a lot younger. I wasn't in this. My brother was still alive. It wasn't part of the journey I'm in now. So it's just crazy to talk to the person that I've actually downloaded. Like, just it's surreal right now, So then when did you sell that? Because you sold it, right? You were able to sell right? Isn't that what happened?
Yep. So I'm still the chairman of the company.
Okay, cool.
But I'm a passive chairman. So what I did was I stepped down as CEO.
Yeah.
So I'm not managing it actively, because the company ended up taking like a different direction, because consumer software, especially when it's positioned as free, is extraordinarily expensive to run. So like essentially, like Facebook, all these different social platforms, before they start monetizing, which you can really only do once you get to like tens of millions of users,
right?
You're just burning through cash at like a wicked rate. So our burn rate was over $250,000 a month. And so we ended up having to position ourselves in more of like a B2B SaaS company. And but what's interesting now is we're actually, because of the decisions that we made 18 months ago, are now going to be doing another big consumer push. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm not actively involved in the management of that company anymore. I'm just, I own some equity. I sold some, and then I'm the passive chairman. So I'm involved in like major decisions, and that's it.
Right. And that's smart, because as an entrepreneur, so anybody listening to this is the true steps of an entrepreneur: sacrificing, eating, less than $1 a day, right? Which I just did. I'm developing a software now. I ate for $1 a day, and if I had a code, and we're going to be pitching it, hopefully at 10X and stuff. Cool. And the reason why I developed that software was just to get leads for JC Tenati. Like, I didn't even understand the capital it could do, but kind of similar, same reason. When you start doing stuff for actual reason, that's just passion, and you don't really look at the money, right? It'll come. You need something more than just that money drive, and that's kind of what you had for it. And, obviously being a kid, kind of similar to like me, who got bullied, picked on, reading books on your own, obviously solve the problem of loneliness was your main drive. Many different reasons, for someone like your mom, something like even what you kind of did. So that's awesome. So bring you present day. So you do that. You're still the chairman of that. Now, what is it called? Monopolize?
Monopolize.
Yeah. So explain that now, present day in here. How new is that? And what's the main goal of that company?
So Monopolize is still fairly new. So it's less than a year old, and I started that with the founding team of Shipt, which is a grocery delivery app that sold to Target in 2017, and the founder of FitTea, and a couple other people who are kind of more behind the scenes in the marketing world, doing a lot of white labeled work for large agencies. So basically, when I was with Hive, I was working a lot with influencers. We worked with hundreds and hundreds of influencers. And so throughout that process, I kind of discovered the good, the bad, and the ugly of working with influencers and working with agencies. And the ugliest part of what I discovered was that a lot of agencies will basically just white label someone else's work and charge you a tremendous amount of margin for the fact that they know who the right person is and you don't. And so I made it kind of my own personal duty to figure out who the heck, like, where does the rubber meet the road? Who are the boots on the ground in this? And who are the people with the actual relationships with these influencers making all these moves for all these big brands? And I ended up finding that about 90%, and I'm not exaggerating, like 90+% of all of the huge influencer campaigns ran for Fortune 500 companies, ran for massive, software companies like TikTok. All these big influencer marketing campaigns were being ran by about 6 people. Wow. And anything that wasn't ran by those 6 people was ran by the company internally itself. And so it was about half a dozen people controlling like 90+% of all of the influencer marketing campaigns and social traffic. And I just basically ended up working with those people for Hive and getting millions of dollars worth of exposure for free because I had the direct connection.
Relationships, connections. Yeah,
exactly. And so I ended up trying to start a marketing agency where I could bring all those people together. And it was a lot harder than it's going to sound in this short story. But basically, I was eventually able to get them to all agree to work together. And now we have access to the largest influencer network in the world of over 3 billion combined followers. And we run influencer marketing campaigns for brands and stuff. So that's basically how it got started, was just me solving a problem for my own company in working with influencers and doing marketing campaigns.
And that's huge because right now with influencers too, which is a great way to sell and everything, and I know going forward. And it's funny that this is the timing. I was just sending out a DM. I'm Jeff the Entrepreneur on Instagram, as most people know, and JeffTheEntrepreneur.com or rebranding. And I have about 5,000 followers right now, right? And I always knew the game. I knew because I was going to do an agency. I didn't know what to do for a while. I knew they were flipping giveaways. I knew it. So I was like, I'm not going to pay for anything that's going to be not in my targeted niche, right? So I just sent a DM like, okay, I'm ready. My partner makes about $50K in affiliate links for my software company, and he's using a lot of that money. He's like, dude, you got to start affiliate links so we can use that fund and use it on your YouTube videos, right? And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you're going to have to do a giveaway to get the follower count up. And I said, yeah, I've been against that because of exactly what you just explained, right? So it's cool. I didn't even plan any of this, but to talk to you who now owns that, which I knew you did something to I just thought it was another marketing agency, but really the bread and butter of many of it is targeting the right influencers to your right niche, right? And that's what Monopolize. It solves that problem without you running to every kid with a smartphone has an agency right now and can have an influencer in India, right, who's going to click and follow you, but it's not going to really target to what you need. Monopolize solves that problem, correct?
Yeah. So like we don't just do social growth. Social growth is a teeny tiny part of what we do.
Okay.
But we do that. And like all the big giveaways, like all the big targeted shout out campaigns, like we do a lot of those. And a lot of the big personal brands come to us for social growth. So like Jason Capital, for example, he's a client of ours, and he sees, like 750% returns on what he spends with us because he knows how to monetize his following. Right. So ultimately, when it comes to social growth and stuff like that, it just comes down to whether or not you know how to monetize your following. But yeah, I mean, it started out with just me trying to solve my own problem. And then obviously that's the best way to start a company, because if you're solving a problem for you, odds are other people have the same problem.
Yeah, and it's true. And dude, that's crazy. That's so cool. And yeah, Jason Capital was on my YouTube channel. I should actually try and get him on the podcast. Great guy too. If you're not following him too. So the present day here, where you're at. So you're doing that. The one question I definitely wanted to ask you about. When did you get? I didn't know you have a kid. So how soon do you have a kid and got married? Where'd that all come from?
I have 4 kids.
Okay. So here's the thing. As an entrepreneur, I don't have girls, right? I don't have girls. I don't have a girlfriend, and I don't drink alcohol, right? So I save money, invest, because it's a dangerous slope. You know, it barely leads to me texting an ex, and then I get off my hustle, right? So, and I also, a lot of my former students, I used to teach at behavioral school. I want to show them that you can do it the right way without even staying clean, not doing drugs, all that stuff, right? I'm going to still be a role model to society, and as everybody tracks the journey. How, being an entrepreneur, this is the one thing I notice. Girls think I'm crazy right now. You know, I'm still human, right? Girls see me. You're all about work. You're all this, that. When you met, is her name Melissa?
Melissa.
Yeah. When you met her, did she, how did you meet her? How did she know she can rock with an entrepreneur who's living, you know, the lifestyle you're living? Like, tell me a little bit of that story. I think it's a sale right there. Go ahead.
Hold on. I think we lost connection there for a second.
Yeah, sorry. I have everything linked up to my phone and I got a call. All right.
So how did I meet Melissa? How did she know that she could handle being with an entrepreneur, and what else?
Yeah. And like, how soon, where were you in that part of the journey? Like, how much was the revenue you were bringing in at that time? Like, to establish a family, right? Cause we're losing it.
Yeah. Well, so everybody, cutting out again. There we go.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that Melissa is like a gold digger. And what's funny is because she literally, when we met, I was so broke that she had to borrow me money. Wow. So she literally loaned me money to pay my rent one time because I was so broke. And so, yeah, she's incredible. So I met her up in Fargo, North Dakota, because we were beta testing up there. So I had just raised $150,000, but I was, like I said, living off of $15,000 for an annual salary. And I met her the first day that I moved up there because the condo building that we were living in, she was the property manager of. Oh. And so what was funny about it was the condo building was brand new. So we were her first tenants. So it was just her and me and my team in the building and nobody else. So she was lonely and didn't have any friends. She was recently divorced and had two young sons, 1 and 2 years old. And I had been, diligently not dating or talking to any girls because I was so focused on work.
Oh, man.
And
that's what I did.
Yep, and she just ended up being a really great friend first. And then obviously when there's kids involved, you really have to make a decision quickly of whether or not you're going to be serious, because you don't want the kids to get attached and then, hurt them. So I just decided that I felt like she was the one. And so we took the relationship very intentionally in a very specific direction of getting married because the kids were involved, and we ended up getting married. And now we have 2 daughters in addition to her 2 sons, which I consider my own. And so, kind of like off the record, on the record, basically her ex-husband's wasn't the greatest guy. He's not involved. And so I consider her sons my sons, but we have the 4 kids together now. So.
Wow, that's awesome, dude. Yeah, and I totally know that feeling. I'm actually going to do something that I might regret later on, but this is on my credit card. This keeps me away. I'm not going to show my credit card here, but this was the Spanish girl I used to date and her little one, Valentina. I love that little one. I used to do homework with her, and it quickly wakened me up to what it would be to be a dad and everything. And at the time, she liked Louis Vuitton and Burberry. I didn't make that type of money. So, and she was more into artistic things. She's a great girl. I still learned a lot from her. But it's cool that you said, like, just telling the whole story and meeting her and everything. And then just, so how soon after meeting her did you get married?
It was a while. I think 2 years and 2 months after. Because
well, it's still a good amount of time. There's girls still with the ring on. The guy's been 6 years and he's still not pulling the question.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, because there were kids involved, I was very intentional about.
Wow, what a good guy. Yeah, commit fully, right?
Yeah. Well, so with her, obviously, I literally couldn't even afford to get married for a while, right? So. Yeah. Once Hive raised more money and things started taking off, then I was able to, afford a ring, and then I was able to afford a wedding because I didn't have anybody help me with my wedding. And our weddings, it's like weddings are expensive, $30,000 something. And so it was more based off of when I could afford stuff back then than it was anything else. But yeah, so she's amazing. Kids are amazing.
All right. So if you're not following this guy, listen, you can see what a stand-up guy he is. This is why I want to have him come on. I've had a few people request to be on this because they know I'm having some big names on it. But this guy has the heart of a gold, been doing it the right way, making the sacrifices. The true entrepreneur destination to make more money, he has done. And now I got to ask you, what's one good book you've read? I know, you've probably read a lot or something or listen. What's one good book you've read, paramount that helped you out in your journey?
Yeah, How to Win Friends and Influence People is by far the best book that anybody can read if they're actually going to apply what's in the book. And I don't care what industry someone's in, like that is a book that can help everybody in any walk of life at any point in time in any career field if they actually apply what they're reading. The problem with most people is they read a book to learn new information. Mm-hmm. And the problem is you already know probably almost everything that you need to know, if not more than everything you need to know, but you're not applying enough. And there's no knowledge is useless. Applied knowledge is what's valuable and what makes a difference in your life. So if you actually apply what's in Dale Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, it will change your life, because it's a book about relationships, and relationships are everything in life. So that's by far the best book that I recommend to anybody. And it's also by far the most diverse, meaning it can help anybody in any walk of life. So there's a lot of other good books, like this book I'm looking at right now, this Influence and Persuasion. There's a lot of good books that I
just got that book, actually. I haven't read it yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of great books out there, but that's the one that I think would make the biggest difference in most people's lives.
So are you more audio or reading or visual reading a book?
I'm both, which is I've since learned is very unusual. Mm-hmm. I like to sit down and actually read a physical book, but I also, when I'm working out, I listen to audiobooks. So it's I consume a lot of books in general. And I wish I had more time to sit and physically read.
Yeah.
And usually I can only sit and physically read a book for 1-2 days a week. So for the other rest of the days of the week, I listen to audiobooks.
Awesome. Yeah, that's what I coach people to do. So guys, you hear it. If you can't read, go while you're at the gym. I listen to audiobooks too. People are like, you're crazy. No, we're downloading knowledge that then we can apply later on. We are crazy, but in a good way, right? We're the ones who change the world. So what's the other thing? So I haven't done this yet, but like Pepsi or Coke, right? And you choose which name you like, right? I don't even drink soda, but if I did, it would be Pepsi.
Okay. I was going to say I don't drink soda.
So do you drink energy drinks?
I don't.
Oh, dude. Oh, you got to teach me how not to do that, man. I love these things, man. It's bad. They're not good for you. I know that. And a lot of my fans, or not fans, whatever they are, they always tell me to stop drinking them. So we're going to get off that. But I do want to ask this, though. I know you both know these names, Gary Vaynerchuk and Grant Cardone. If you had to pick their ideology for success, because they're a little too different, which one do you see you kind of cater with more?
So I know both of them.
Oh, okay. So I don't get you in trouble here. This is like, give it out a kid. But you know what I'm saying, though. They have two different things, And do you want me to explain more what I mean by that?
No, I understand what you're saying. Like who do I think is like the person that people should listen to more? Here's the thing.
Who do you relate to more? Maybe it's more the way to ask it. There's no right or wrong. I think it's whoever people like. But
yeah, like I said, it's kind of hard because I know both of them and I respect both of them. Here's what I'll say though, because I understand the end result of what you're looking for from the question, and I won't abandon that. So here's what I'll say is if you're looking for someone to mentor or to be mentored by or someone to look up to, try to find somebody whose life embodies what you are looking for or what you want to be in all areas, not just in one. And so a lot of people, and I just recently posted about this, but a lot of people really look up to Elon Musk, for example, but he's been divorced 4 or 5 times. And so if there's a lot of people who don't ever plan on getting married. So you could 100% emulate Elon's life and be very successful and you could be very happy. But again, if you value marriage and you value family, then Elon's life is probably you're not going to be able to emulate his life without ending up with the same results he's had when it comes to his family. Right. So I think the important thing when you're looking for a mentor is try to find somebody who's had success in more than just the area of finances, right? And in the area of happiness first and foremost, because that's the ultimate measuring stick that you need to be basing your success on, is whether or not you're happy. And then in the area of relationships, because relationships matter more than money, and then also money. So I think that, there's a lot of different things that matter when it comes to looking up to somebody. And a lot of people only care about looking up to people who have a lot of money. Here's the reality. There's a lot of people that I know with a lot of money who are very miserable. There's also a lot of people that I know with a lot of money who are very happy. And usually the people who are happy are the people who kept their priorities in check as they were growing. And they maintained that family was the most important, or God was the most important, and that everything else was after that. And I think that that's really important as a young entrepreneur when you're trying to find somebody to look up to just be careful about making sure that whoever you're choosing to look up to is somebody who embodies a life that you want in all its entirety. So I'll just leave you with that instead of, picking and choosing between Grant and Gary.
No, it just sounds, dude, I love that. That's your wisdom there. And that's so true. And I think it's no shame to any of the listeners, Grant Cardone's definitely the one that, after my brother, I relate to him, and the way he even does his family in the G&E show, I like a lot of what he does. Not to get into too much of that, just I relate and rock with him. People who can know Grant Cardone and rock with that, I thought I was crazy until I met that guy, and I'm like, okay, then there might not be something wrong with me, if I can act like that and still get to this level, So
absolutely, and I think that's important. The other important thing too, in line with what you're saying, is there's somebody for everybody, right? Like right. There's a lot of different people that are in the personal brand entrepreneur influencer space. And everybody has a different story. And I think that that's great because it means that everybody can relate to, differently to an audience that needs that type of a person to relate to. You know what I mean? So
yeah, even with you and your story, I'm sure someone relates to it a lot. I relate to it a little bit, someone more. And it's like, man, if he did it, I can do it. And it's kind of that success plan of it. And that's why, I don't follow these guys. I do Cardone U daily, but I don't follow these guys so religiously because the principles of success, and this once it's getting down there, grinding work and adding value and solving problems for an entrepreneur, right? So, but my whole point is, I think my point of asking the question more was to see kind of where there's certain people I know who kind of just, I don't want to out anybody, but they love Gary Vee because he gives them permission to smoke weed and do what they love no matter what they get paid. And as a true entrepreneur, I think, and listen, you go broke and you invest into it, but you're 100K into that. As a true entrepreneur, the way to keep score of your business doing well, it's in the data and the money doing well. Not to even say to buy materialistic things. And just that's the thing. I know that I'm a Jesus guy, right? So that's my first priority. And even though right now I'm not a multimillionaire yet or any of that stuff too, my sister texted me, hey, we want to be here. I said, yeah, I'll be there. Absolutely. I know I'm going to make time for family first. So even with my hustle and always working and being at the hotels, really having my priorities was essential to this journey. Right. And any entrepreneur out there, I think, who gets caught up into that, speak about that. Speak a little bit of our priorities. Then we're going to go on our 5 final questions. I mean, you kind of did before, but what was the one priority you have? What's something you value right now where you're at?
Yeah, well, so my number one priority is God and my relationship. I'm a Christian. My relationship with Jesus Christ.
I didn't know that.
My number two priority is my marriage.
Yeah.
A lot of people say that kids should come before marriage, and I don't believe in that at all. I think that you're serving your kids the best by having a good marriage, and I think that a lot of times if you get that twisted, you end up with a rocky marriage that ends up breaking apart, and that affects the kids very negatively. And as a product of a divorced set of parents, I believe in that. So number 2 is my marriage. Number 3, shortly after that, right, is my kids. And then after that is my friends, my other relationships that I have in life. And then after that's my business. And I found that what's interesting is by having your priorities in line that way, for me, my business thrives even more because any success I've had has been based off the relationships that I have. Relationships are so key in financial success. And so everything kind of feeds into each other, but that's been my priorities for as long as I can remember.
Yeah, I love the background too. I'm seeing Principles by Ray. I'm reading that book right now or listening to it. But yeah, that's true. So we're gonna and that guy. If you're not following that guy, so where you're at right now, obviously you're not as broke as you were, right? You have a little bit more money in the bank, right? What's for an entrepreneur who's very similar, kind of going on the same. I'm a little years dialed back to you. I'm going to be beta testing and maybe. By the way, why did you go to North Dakota to beta test? I'm just curious.
Yeah, right. So I'm from Minnesota, but ironically, that didn't have anything to do with it. One of our lead investors, so our lead investor was the co-founder of EA Games.
Oh wow!
But our secondary, so we had one investor who put in more money than our lead. It's kind of a little confusing, but basically, just because you're a lead investor doesn't mean that you put in the most amount of money. It just means that you put in the first money. So we had another investor that put in by far more money than anybody else. And he's crazy successful, multi-billionaire, lives in California and is in real estate. And so he graduated from NDSU and he's their number one contributing alumni. So he had a giant foot in the door for us to be able to kind of get whatever we wanted there. So it just made the most sense.
That's awesome. He's a good guy.
Our investor?
Yeah.
Great guy. Yeah. Really great guy. And honestly, with a lot of the, when people talk about Grant and Gary and all these different big personal brands and who they should follow and everything, one of the things that I learned living in Silicon Valley is that the people with the biggest amount of money and Grant, like Gary, these guys all know this. They'll tell you the same thing. The people with the most amount of money, the billion, like big billionaire boys, the ones with, 10, 20, $30 billion, they all drive like, this guy drove a 98 Buick LeSabre. You know what I mean? And my other investor, the co-founder of EA Games, drove a 2002 Dodge Ram.
Yeah.
And the thing is they used to drive exotic cars. They used to have all that stuff. And then they realized that it really doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And they're more focused on giving back and being generous and making sure, obviously, that at this point for them, they're going to be financially independent for the rest of their life, which that's what people really should be shooting for, is the freedom. Yeah. Once you have the freedom, I honestly think that it's a sad mistake when entrepreneurs will make their first money and then go buy a bunch of dumb stuff instead of trying to make sure that money makes the money.
Cody Kearns. No, I'm kidding. I love Cody.
Bank, you know what I mean? So for me, when I've made my first big chunk of cash, I had a day where I did a secondary sale, which is when you sell a piece of a company at the recent valuation. And we had just been valued at like $20 million. And so I sold a piece of equity in the company and I had a 6-figure amount of cash drop into my personal bank account. And it was the most amount of money I'd ever seen in my life. And more than I knew anybody made in a year back in my hometown. And it was the worst thing for me. I went out and I bought an exotic car, a Rolex, and $20,000 worth of silver and gold like an idiot.
Yeah.
At the peak of the market, so I ended up losing money on all that stuff.
What year was that?
2015, probably.
Okay. Oh, okay. All right. So recent. How much? I know it's 6-figure. How much was it? How much? Can you say the amount, or is it like secret?
What I can say is that the company was valued at $20 million, and my stake in the company was over $5 million. So I sold a piece of that, a small piece of that, and then it was more money than I'd ever had. And so I just spent it on a bunch of dumb stuff. And then I ended up not having that money when I wish I would have, in order to invest into a company that's now worth like close to $1 billion. I could have invested $100 grand, and I had the $100,000, but I blew all the money on dumb stuff. And I got a huge house, just stupid stuff. And when I had the opportunity to invest, I couldn't afford to.
Wow.
And that would have been worth millions and millions of dollars by now for that specific company.
So people say, why do you do a podcast, right? Because I know I'm going to come in and some money and I want to buy a Tesla so bad, right? And there's no reason to buy it. There's no reason. I have a Mazda 3 that runs fine. I'm going to run into the ground. This alone has taught me right there, if anything, I owe you a lot to do that. And if I do that and you see it, just be like, Jeff, what are you doing, man? All right. So that, dude, that's crazy, dude. I'm actually, every time I enjoy, if you guys are not listening, subscribing, or rating these these things on iTunes, Make More Money Podcast. Share it with somebody if you're enjoying this conversation. Listen this long. They've actually been all just wealth of knowledge from people who've actually done it and been there before. So thank you so much for your time. So when you were young, reading the book, the whole thing, the encyclopedia, did you think anything that you did then prepared you for what you're now? Or was it, did you have to get around 5 different people and surround yourself with different people?
When I was young, what prepared me for now?
Yeah.
I think my insane level of curiosity, my love of learning, and honestly, that's probably the 2 biggest things that prepared me for my success now, because obviously I didn't stop reading. I just changed what I read. I changed from reading encyclopedias and random stuff and fiction books to reading books that were focused around an area that could help me excel in life. And so my love of learning was probably the biggest thing. And then also the ability to focus all the way through until excellence happened. And that came from playing piano from when I was 4 years old, all the way through my childhood, playing drums, playing guitar. Mastering playing an instrument is very hard, and it takes a very long period of time. And it's a lot of, dedication and focus. And I think that has served me well in business too.
Well, my dream, so anybody following me knows I'm going to open a coffee shop music studio one day at the headstone of my success called Kokomo J's in honor of my brother. Me and him planned on doing it. It's going to happen. So we're going to have a keyboard there. I would love when we open, you swing by, man. I'll buy you something. You can play something on the key. I play a little keyboard too, piano. Nice. So I know, and you're right, 100% focus with that. All right, man, there's so many more questions I want to ask. I know maybe I'll just pay for a coaching session with you one day, dude. But let's go into this, best relationship advice. So obviously, I usually ask, I have a lot of younger kids. There's more partnerships that they're getting into. More, I'm interested in marriage advice. I sell doors and windows. Before we close the deal, I ask every couple, hey, why are you guys making $1,000 decision together and smiling about it with me? What's the secret? And I'm writing them down. I'm going to put a little book, 50 of the best ones that I've heard. But I want to hear from you. What's some relationship advice to make it work with you and Melissa?
You have to, if you try to find time for important things in life, you won't find it. You have to make time.
Oh, that's true.
And for me, I have made time for my marriage at the expense of business, at the expense of sleep, at the expense of time for myself, at the expense of all sorts of things. I have made time for the things that are important to me, even though there's opportunity cost there, because I know what my priorities are. And if you try to find time, you either won't find it at all, or you won't find enough of it, and it'll hurt you. So making time for the things that matter is the best advice I can give.
Wow, that's so true, actually. And guys, if you're enjoying this, I heard an interview with him first. I think it was my boy Apple Kreider who edited this podcast. You can go to podblade.com if you're doing a podcast. He's the sponsor of today's episode. He'll edit them just as we're doing the audio, make a little audiogram for you. He has a great team. So I just got to give a shout out to him. You remember being on Apple's podcast?
Yep.
Yeah, that was a great.
He's a good dude.
That was the first time I heard you too. All right, so. Now, this is big for me. My passion, I left teaching behavioral middle school kids. Now I'm an entrepreneur. Grant told me, Jeff, you're never going to change the education system. I became a quarterback when people told me I couldn't become a quarterback. I became a lifeguard when someone told me I couldn't become a lifeguard, a girl I had a crush on. I won't say her name, okay? So I get that. People know who it is, though. And what else? I became a teacher when they said I could become a teacher, and now I'm an entrepreneur when people said, Jeff, you can't focus. And I'm pretty focused right now. So what's one change in the education system you think that could benefit not just entrepreneurs, but anything that you think growing up in school?
So the education system is what I want my life legacy to be involved in. So, yeah. Yeah. So my legacy goal is I want to be able to create enough wealth around me and influence around me to be able to make a historical dent in what I feel is a very broken and very outdated system that's hurting a lot of people and causing a lot of great kids to think that they're stupid and useless. And I think that the ultimate solution to our problem right now is we're doing a one size fits all, and one size does not fit all. I mean, I'm 6.5 feet tall and I'm 280 pounds. I'm the quintessential definition of one size doesn't fit all when it comes to clothing. Dude, one size does not fit all when it comes to education. And so it needs to be more custom tailored. We have the technology, we have the expertise to make it custom tailored. And I think that it's not a matter of, like, for me, pulling my kids from the problem and leaving it a problem by homeschooling my kids. It's pulling my kids from the problem and then solving the problem so that their kids don't have to deal with the same problem. And I think that so many people just want to turn a blind eye and say, well, I'm just going to homeschool my kids, or I'm going to stick them in a small private school, instead of solving this really, really critical issue that's affecting all of our young people. And so that's a huge part of why I do everything I do.
Wow. So and I didn't even know that. So me and you, we'll probably later on down the road share thoughts on that, because I have thoughts there. Actually, yeah, there's so many things. I'm not going to get too into that, but really quick, working to build a YouTube university type thing that we're going to pitch to private schools down the road in about 2 years is kind of the goal, going private schools. And then I've always joked, if I have to run for president to change what the whole Common Core that I had to teach, I'll do it, whatever it takes to change that. That's something that's definitely a passion in me. I was actually connected with a Manny Lopez, who's going to be on this podcast. There's the other kid, he's an influencer, Caleb Maddox. I think he has a good passion about it too. So there's a lot of young entrepreneurs right now that are doing it. And I think it's Evan Carmichael says entrepreneurs are the crazy people that can change the world. The people that change the world are the ones crazy enough to think they can do it. Right. So if anybody's listening, man, this gives me hope and gives anybody hope to their kids. So do you homeschool your kids now?
Yeah. Our kids are homeschooled.
That's awesome. Were you homeschooled or no?
No, I was in public school.
Yeah, so I was homeschooled, and everybody gets the whole thing, but my parents were way ahead of it. And now it was funny from going homeschooled to teaching, and then realizing why, and now being like, all right, let me fix this, and so we'll get there. All right, wow, this is great. So where can people hear? Well, let me ask this though: what's something you're looking forward to coming up?
I mean, I'm looking forward to watching we just had a baby just a few days ago.
Oh, congrats. So, I think I did know that. My bad for not being totally on top of it. Congratulations on that. I did see something like that. I follow so many so I apologize.
You're fine.
How much for the girl listening, the 5 girls we have listening, how much did it weigh? What's its name?
Yeah. 6 pounds, 14 ounces, and 19 inches long. Yeah, her name's Paisley.
Paisley? Oh, awesome. Yeah. Beautiful.
So yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to watching my kids grow up and showing them the best the world has to offer. I think as far as what I'm looking forward to in business, everything that I do is kind of reverse engineered to get to that end goal of meeting more people with means and gaining more influence among those people. So everything that I've ever done is kind of for that end purpose. So, monopolize the purpose of having the agency is to just meet more of those people and then eventually sell the company and just, do kind of more of the same there. So for me, not to sound kind of like it's boring and monotonous, but for me, it's all a means to an end. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I mean, I'm looking forward to a lot of things to do with my kids. So.
Well, it sounds like you have your priorities in shape. So where can people find, if they were like, man, we got to hear more from this guy, where can they find more of you?
Yeah. So I just started a YouTube channel. So you can find me on YouTube. It's just Brett, Brett Knutson, Knutson. And then my Instagram is just Knutson, my last name.
By the way, how long ago did you start that Instagram?
How long ago did I start on Instagram?
Yeah.
6 years, something like that.
Because the people like Credit or you who have the one name, it just looks so sick, right? So
I have a media panel which lets me get usernames and stuff like that. So
because
my username used to be Brett.Knutson.
Okay, so it does. I might have to talk to you about that because Jeff the Entrepreneur is kind of long. I mean, Grant told me to run with it because of that, so I'm listening to him now. But yeah, I always want to kind of, and JeffJCunningham.com is a little long, so got to think show. Although post flow is pretty small, and that's the next thing I'm excited for. All right, hey, this has been a great time. Thank you so much for your time. I've learned a lot from it. Was there any other questions here? Oh yes, we got where we can find you. Is there any last words you want to switch? We kind of filled up that hour pretty enjoyably for everybody.
I thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I hope that everybody got something out. If you have any questions, everybody can just reach out to me on Instagram, and I try to get back to everybody as best I can.
Which is true, because he has a assistant who set it up, which is good. He's leveraging his time, but he's also responded to me. You're a great guy. Dude, you give me hope in the world. Now, last thing for my dad, who thinks he's always looking for the rapture to happen and all the bad stuff, right? And I'm always trying to change the world here. What do you say to the people who are just looking at all the bad stuff in the world that's going on?
I mean, not speaking to your dad specifically, but I just think in general, Steve Jobs, and I really don't like being cliche and quoting big entrepreneurs like this, but Steve Jobs said something that was really remarkable when he was in the process of passing away from cancer. And he just said, thinking about, or I think maybe it was Bill Gates that said it about Steve Jobs, that thinking about his impending death wasn't very productive. And I think that if you want to enjoy life, I just had this conversation with my mom yesterday because she's staying here with us visiting. Wow. If you want to enjoy life, there's no point in worrying about the what ifs and like my mom's obviously, like I said, has chronic illnesses, and 15 years ago she was told she'd only live 5 years. Well, she's lived 15 years, and she can either live the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years thinking that she's going to die any day, or she can think that it might be another 15 years or more. And I think that it's allowing your life to be stolen from you when you think that way. And I think that the best thing that you can do is just understand that life is too short to think that way, and life is also too long to be miserable at the same time. So pursue what makes you happy. Happiness is the ultimate win in life over money, over anything else. And so have happiness be your measuring stick for success.
Wow. All right, we're going to end it on that. JeffJCunningham.com. This has been the Make More Money podcast. I do this to get listeners. It's more, make more difference, make more time, make more relationships. You're going to do all that with money as an entrepreneur. I don't want anybody to get the wrong way by the title. But Brett, hey, thank you so much, man. This has been great. So we're going to chat a little bit off air here. But thank you so much. This has been JeffJCunningham.com. Out.